They had destroyed 17 worlds before they found Earth. Commander Al stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Oblivion's Edge, and watched as the blue planet grew larger on the viewing screen. His tall body was covered in ceremonial armor, and his 4 eyes studied the world below with cold interest. Behind him, 300 warships waited in formation. Each one carried enough firepower to burn a continent to glass. This was what they did. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted, destroying what they did not need. They had been doing this for 2,000 years. No species had ever stopped them. No species had ever come close. "Report," Al said. His voice was deep and carried no emotion. His second officer, a younger named, stepped forward. "The planet is called Earth by its inhabitants, population of 8 billion. They have primitive technology, chemical rockets, basic satellites, no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel." Al made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They cannot even leave their own star system." "No, Commander. They are confined to their world and a small moon nearby." "And their military strength?" A pulled up the data on his screen. "They have nuclear weapons, but nothing that can reach our ships in orbit. Their aircraft cannot fly high enough to engage us. Their naval vessels are limited to water. They pose no threat whatsoever." Al nodded slowly. This was good. This was very good. The last world they had conquered, a planet called Prime, had possessed orbital defense platforms that destroyed 12 ships before falling. Al had lost good warriors that day, but this world, this Earth, had nothing. It would fall in hours. "Send the standard message," Al ordered. "Give them 48 hours to surrender. If they refuse, begin the bombardment." A bowed his head. "It will be done, Commander." The message was transmitted toward the planet below. Al turned away from the screen and walked to his private quarters. He did not need to watch. He had seen this happen too many times. The humans would panic. Their leaders would argue. Some would want to fight. Some would want to surrender. In the end, it did not matter. They would all burn just the same. Far below, on the surface of Earth, a man named Danny was looking at the stars. Danny was 32 years old and worked as a mechanic during the day. But at night, he loved to use his telescope. He had built it himself from parts he found online and at garage sales. It was not fancy, but it worked well enough. He could see the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter. Sometimes he took photos and posted them on the internet. Tonight, he was trying to photograph a distant nebula, but something else caught his attention. There was a cluster of lights near the edge of the solar system. At first, he thought it was a glitch in his equipment. He adjusted the lens and looked again. The lights were still there, and they were moving. Danny felt his heart begin to beat faster. He grabbed his phone and called his friend Kate. Kate was an astrophysicist who worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. They had met at a science convention 3 years ago and had stayed in touch ever since. "Kate, you need to look at something," Danny said when she answered. "Danny, it's almost midnight," Kate replied. She sounded tired. I know, but I'm seeing something weird. There are lights near Neptune, a lot of them, and they're moving in formation." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Kate spoke again, and her voice was more serious. "Send me your coordinates. I'll check it out." Danny sent the information and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, his phone rang. "Danny," Kate's voice was shaking. "Those aren't natural objects. They're artificial. We're picking them up on every sensor we have. There are over 300 of them, and they're heading straight for Earth." Danny felt the world tilt beneath his feet. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we have visitors, and I don't think they're friendly." Within 2 hours, every government on Earth had been. Emergency meetings were called. Military bases went on high alert. Satellites were repositioned to get a better look at the approaching objects. And then the message arrived. It was broadcast on every frequency. Scientists at listening stations around the world picked it up at the same time. The message was simple and direct. It was written in a format that was clearly meant to be translated, mathematical symbols that spelled out words. Surrender unconditionally within 48 hours. Your planet will become property of the Dominion. Resistance will result in total destruction. The President of the United States, a man named Edward Grey, sat in the Oval Office and read the translated message 3 times. His Secretary of Defense, Cole, stood beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "How long do we have?" the President finally asked. 47 hours now, replied. "The fleet is still approaching. They'll be in Earth orbit within 12 hours. "Can we fight them?" Shook his head slowly. "Our best missiles might reach their ships, but we have no idea if they can do any damage. If their technology is advanced enough to cross interstellar space, they probably have defenses we can't even imagine." President Grey leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. In his lifetime, he had faced many crises: economic downturns, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could prepare anyone for this. "So we either surrender and become slaves," he said, "or we fight and die." "That appears to be the choice, sir." The President closed his eyes. Outside the window, the sun was rising over Washington, D.C. It was a beautiful morning. Birds were singing. Children were getting ready for school. People were drinking coffee and complaining about traffic. None of them knew yet. None of them understood that in less than 2 days, everything they knew might come to an end. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," President Grey said, "and contact the United Nations. If this is going to be humanity's last stand, then we're going to make it together." In New Mexico, Danny sat on his porch and watched the sky. Somewhere up there, beyond the blue atmosphere, an alien fleet was approaching. He thought about his parents, his sister, his niece who had just turned 5. He wondered if any of them would survive what was coming. Then he stood up, went inside, and started packing. If the world was going to end, he was not going to wait for it to happen. He was going to find a way to help. He just had no idea how. The news spread across the world like wildfire. Within 6 hours of the message, every television channel was talking about it. Experts were brought on to explain what was happening. Military analysts tried to calculate humanity's chances. Religious leaders called for prayer. Politicians gave speeches about courage and unity. But beneath all the words, everyone could feel the same cold truth. Humanity was not ready for this. In cities around the world, people reacted in different ways. Some ran to the stores and bought all the food and water they could carry. Some locked themselves in their homes and refused to come out. Some gathered in churches and mosques and temples, seeking comfort in their faith. And some simply walked outside and stared at the sky, trying to see the enemy that was coming for them. At the Pentagon, Cole had not slept in 30 hours. He sat in the war room, surrounded by generals and admirals and intelligence officers. Maps covered the walls. Screens showed satellite images of the alien fleet, now clearly visible as it approached Earth's orbit. General Lisa was the commander of the United States Air Force. She was a tall woman with short hair and eyes that had seen 2 wars. She stood at the main screen and pointed at the largest ship in the enemy formation. "That's their flagship," she said. "We estimate it's about 4 miles long. The other ships range from half a mile to 2 miles. Based on their speed and trajectory, they'll reach geosynchronous orbit in about 8 hours. "And when they do?" asked. Lisa's face was grim. "When they do, they'll have a clear line of fire to any point on the planet. They can hit any city, any military base, any target they choose, and we won't be able to stop them." Rubbed his eyes. "What about our nuclear arsenal?" "We've run the simulations," Lisa replied. "If we launch everything we have, we might be able to hit some of their smaller ships, but the flagship is too well protected. And even if we destroy a few of their vessels, they'll respond with overwhelming force. We estimate that a full nuclear exchange would result in the destruction of every major city on Earth within the first hour. The room was silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Fighting was suicide, but surrendering meant giving up everything they had ever known. In the corner of the room, a young officer raised his hand. His name was Price, and he worked in the communications division. "Sir, there's something else. We've been analyzing the alien transmission, and we found something unusual." Turn to look at him. "What is it?" "The message isn't encrypted," said. "It's completely open. We translated it in less than an hour. That shouldn't be possible if they were trying to hide anything." "What does that tell us?" Hesitated. "It tells us they're not afraid of us. They don't think we can do anything with their message. They don't think we're a threat at all." Stared at the young officer for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Get me a list of everyone who worked on that translation. I want to talk to them. All of them." 300 miles away, in a classified facility beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Blake was reading the same message for the 20th time. Was 38 years old. He had spent his career studying languages, both human and theoretical. He had worked on projects involving communication with potential extraterrestrial intelligence. He had written papers about how to construct messages that could be understood by any intelligent species, but he had never imagined he would actually receive one. Beside him sat Amy Porter, a communications specialist who had been pulled from her job at the National Security Agency. She was young, only 26, but she had a mind that could see patterns where others saw only chaos. Together, they had been the first to fully decode the message. "They're arrogant," Amy said. She was staring at her computer screen. "Look at the structure of the message. There's no attempt to understand who we are or what we want. They just assume we'll do what they say." Nodded. "They've done this before, many times. They have a system that works and they don't see any reason to change it." "So what do we do?" Leaned back in his chair and thought. The problem was not military. Everyone knew that humanity could not win a straight fight against the problem was psychological. The aliens expected a certain response. They expected fear, panic, and either surrender or desperate resistance. They had seen it all before. But what if humanity did something unexpected? What if they broke the pattern? "We need to understand them better," said. "Not their technology, their minds, the way they think, the way they see the world." He stood up and walked to a whiteboard on the wall. He picked up a marker and began to write. 17 worlds, he said as he wrote. They've conquered 17 planets. That means they've received responses from 17 different species. Some probably surrendered immediately. Some probably fought. But in the end, they all lost. So they have learned that no matter what a species does, the result is the same. Amy nodded. They're predators, they don't respect their prey. Exactly, but predators have weaknesses. They become overconfident. They stop thinking about what could go wrong. They assume that the future will be like the past. Drew a circle on the board. This is Earth. We're just another target to them. But what if we could change that? What if we could make them see us differently? How? Amy asked. Smiled slightly. By doing something they've never seen before, something that doesn't fit their model, something that makes them stop and think. At that moment the door opened and Cole walked in. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. "Dr. Blake," he said, "I've been told you have ideas. I need ideas right now. We have less than 40 hours left and I'm running out of options." Turned to face him. "Mr. Secretary, I think I know how we can survive this, but it's not a military solution. It's a communication." Raised an eyebrow. "You want to talk to them. They've already told us to surrender or die." "Yes, but they're expecting a certain kind of response. They're expecting us to beg or fight. What if we do neither? What if we send them a message that they've never received before? Something that makes them question whether conquering Earth is really worth the cost?" Was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up a chair and sat down. "I'm listening," he said. For the next 3 hours, explained his theory. He talked about predator psychology. He talked about the history of human resistance movements. He talked about how humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. He talked about stubbornness and spite and the refusal to ever truly give up. When he was finished, sat in silence for a long time. "You want us to threaten them," he finally said. "No," replied. "I want us to promise them. There's a difference. A threat is something you might not follow through on. A promise is something you will do no matter what. We need to make them believe that even if they destroy every city on Earth, even if they kill billions of people, the survivors will spend the rest of their lives hunting them. Not because they think they can win, but because that's just what humans do." Looked at Amy. "Do you think this could work?" Amy took a deep breath. "I think it's crazy, but I also think it's our only chance." Stood up and walked to the door. Then he stopped and looked back. "You have 12 hours to write the most important message in human history. Don't waste a single word." The clock was ticking, and Blake could feel every second. He sat at a long table in the underground facility with Amy Porter on his right and 2 new team members across from him. The first was Dr. Ben, a historian who specialized in military conflicts and resistance movements throughout human history. The second was Tors, a game theorist who had spent her career studying how people made decisions under pressure. Cole had brought them together. He had given them one job: write a message that would stop an alien invasion. It sounded impossible. It probably was impossible, but they had to try. "Okay," said, looking at his team. "Let's start with what we know. They have conquered 17 worlds. They send the same message every time: surrender or die. They expect one of 2 responses. Either the species gives up or they fight back with whatever weapons they have. Either way, the win." Ben nodded. He was an older man with white hair and glasses. His voice was calm and steady. "The pattern you're describing is classic predator behavior. They've developed a system that works, and they don't deviate from it. But that also means they have blind spots. They can't imagine anything outside their experience." "What kind of blind spots?" Amy asked. Ben thought for a moment. Throughout human history, the most successful resistance movements have been the ones that refuse to play by the enemy's rules. Guerrilla warfare, psychological attacks, long-term persistence. The Nazis expected France to surrender after they conquered Paris. And officially, France did surrender. But the French resistance fought for 4 years without any real hope of victory. They fought because they refused to accept defeat. Tors leaned forward. She was a younger woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her eyes were intense. "From a game theory perspective, they are playing a simple game. They make a threat, and they expect their target to calculate the odds of survival. If the odds are bad, the logical choice is to surrender. If the odds are slightly better, the logical choice is to fight. But both choices end the same way." "So we need to change the game," said. "Exactly. We need to introduce a new variable that they haven't considered, something that makes them recalculate." Stood up and began packing. What do they want? They want resources, territory, power. Every conquest costs them something: ships, soldiers, time. They're willing to pay that cost because the reward is worth it. But what if we could convince them that conquering Earth would cost more than it's worth? Amy shook her head. "We can't actually hurt them. Our weapons are useless against their technology." "Our weapons are useless," agreed. "But what about after the invasion? What about occupation? They don't just destroy planets, they conquer them, they use them. That means they need to control the population, and that's where we have an advantage." Ben's eyes lit up with understanding. Occupation is always more expensive than conquest. Napoleon conquered Russia in a few months, but he couldn't hold it. The resistance bled his army dry. The same thing happened to the British in America, to the Soviets in Afghanistan, to every empire that tried to control a population that refused to be controlled. "So we tell them that," said. We tell them that even if they win the war, they'll never win the peace. Nodded, but we have to go further than that. We have to make them believe that we're different from every other species they've conquered. We have to make them believe that humans will never stop fighting, never stop resisting, never accept defeat. Not because we think we can win, but because that's just who we are. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Amy spoke. It's a bluff. We're basically trying to scare them. No, said firmly. It's not a bluff. Look at human history. We've survived ice ages. We've survived plagues that killed half the population of Europe. We've survived 2 world wars, nuclear weapons, and countless natural disasters. And every single time we came back, we rebuilt. We kept going. That's not a bluff. That's just what we do. Ben nodded slowly. They have probably never encountered a species like us. Most intelligent species probably develop in stable environments. They're adapted for cooperation and efficiency. But humans evolved in one of the most unstable environments in the galaxy. We're adapted for survival at any cost. We're stubborn, vengeful, and we have very long memories. Pulled out a notebook and began writing. So the message needs to do 3 things. First, acknowledge that we know we can't win a military fight. This establishes honesty and shows we're not delusional. Second, explain that we will resist occupation forever, regardless of the cost. Third, warn them that survivors will spread across the galaxy and spend generations hunting them down. Smiled. That's it. That's exactly it. We're not threatening to defeat them. We're promising to be a problem they can never solve. We're promising to be their worst nightmare, not because we're strong, but because we absolutely refuse to go away. For the next several hours, they worked on the message. Every word was carefully chosen. Every sentence was debated. They needed to sound strong but not crazy. They needed to sound confident but not delusional. They needed to sound like they meant every single word. At one point, Cole came to check on their progress. He read what they had written so far and was quiet for a long time. "Will this work?" he asked. Looked at him honestly. "I don't know, but I know that if we surrender, we lose everything. And if we fight with conventional weapons, we lose everything. This is the only option that gives us any chance at all." Nodded. "Keep working. You have 10 hours left." As the night went on, the team refined their message over and over again. They removed words that sounded weak. They added phrases that emphasized humanity's history of survival. They made sure the mathematical primer was clear enough that they could translate it perfectly. Around 3 in the morning, suddenly stopped typing. She looked at the others with a strange expression. "You know what the scariest part of this is," she said. "What?" Amy asked. "The scariest part is that we're not lying. Everything we're saying in this message is true. Humans really are that stubborn. We really will fight forever. If they destroy our civilization, the survivors really will spend the rest of their lives trying to get revenge. We're not making this up. We're just reminding them of what we are." The room was silent, looked at the message on the screen. It was almost complete now, just a few more adjustments. "That's what makes it powerful," he said quietly. "Lies can be detected, truth can't. They will look at our history and they'll see that every word is real. They'll see a species that has been fighting and surviving and refusing to die for 100,000 years. And they'll have to ask themselves, is conquering this planet really worth it?" By dawn, the message was finished. Read it one more time, making sure every word was perfect. Then he sent it to Cole for approval. The Secretary of Defense read it in silence. When he was done, he looked up with something like hope in his eyes. "Send it," he said. "Send it to every transmitter we have. Let the whole galaxy hear what humanity has to say." And so, with 18 hours left before the deadline, Earth spoke back. Commander Al was in his private quarters when the transmission arrived. He had been reviewing reports from his fleet, calculating the exact positions for the bombardment. It was routine work. He had done it many times before. The humans would either surrender in time or they would not. Either way, by this time tomorrow, Earth would belong to the Dominion. Then his communication officer contacted him. "Commander, we have received a response from the planet." Al felt a flicker of annoyance. Of course the humans had responded. They always responded, usually with pathetic pleas for mercy or foolish declarations of war. He had heard them all before. Every species thought they were special. Every species thought their words would somehow change the outcome. They were always wrong. "Send it to my screen," Al ordered. The message appeared before him. He began to read, expecting the usual nonsense. But as his 4 eyes moved across the translated text, something strange happened. He stopped. He read it again. And again. The message was unlike anything he had ever seen. It did not beg. It did not threaten. It did not promise to fight or surrender. Instead, it simply stated facts. Cold, clear facts about what humanity was and what humanity would do. "To the fleet approaching our world, we have studied your conquests. We know you have never been defeated. We know our weapons cannot harm you. We know you expect us to surrender or die. We will do neither." Al felt his pulse quicken. This was wrong. This was not how conquered species behaved. "If you destroy our cities, we will live in the ruins. If you burn our fields, we will eat the ashes. If you kill our leaders, 1,000 more will rise. You may glass our planet, but you will never erase us. We have faced extinction before, from ice ages, plagues, and our own weapons. We are still here. You are not our first apocalypse." The commander stood up slowly. His hand was trembling slightly. He told himself it was anger, but some part of him knew that was not true. "And if even one human survives, they will spend every remaining breath teaching their children one thing: how to find you. We do not surrender, we do not forget, we do not forgive. You may take Earth, but you will never have peace again. Choose wisely." Al stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he called his officers to the bridge. They arrived quickly, sensing that something was different. A was the first to enter, followed by Weapons Master and Intelligence Chief. They stood in formation before their commander, waiting. "Have you read the human transmission?" Al asked. "I have, Commander," replied. "It is unusual, but surely it changes nothing. They are still primitive, they still cannot harm us." "Read it again," Al ordered. "Read it carefully, then tell me what you see." The officers reviewed the message on the main screen. At first, their expressions were dismissive, but as they read, their faces changed. The Weapons Master was the first to speak. "This is not a threat," he said slowly. "This is a promise. They are not saying they will try to fight us. They are saying they will never stop, even if we destroy them, even if we kill most of their population. The survivors will pass their hatred to their children." "So what?" I said. "We can destroy them completely, total extermination. No survivors means no resistance." "Can we?" I asked. She was older than the others and her voice was thoughtful. 8 billion humans spread across every continent. Even with our weapons, eliminating every single one would take months. And during that time, many would escape. They have primitive spacecraft. They have underground shelters. Some would survive. Some always survive." Al nodded. "Intelligence Chief, what do your records say about human history?" I pulled up data on her console. Humans have existed as a species for approximately 300,000 years. During that time, they have faced multiple extinction-level events. Ice ages that covered most of their planet. Diseases that killed between 30 and 60% of their population. They have fought 2 global wars, and they currently possess weapons capable of destroying themselves entirely. "And yet they are still here," Al said. "Yes, Commander, they are still here. Our psychological profiles suggest that humans are unusually resistant to despair. They form strong emotional bonds that motivate them to fight even when logic says they should surrender. They pass grudges down through generations. They remember insults for centuries. The bridge was silent, shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, are you suggesting we retreat? The Dominion does not retreat. We have never failed to conquer a target." "I am not suggesting anything yet," Al replied. "I am considering our options. Contact the High Council. I want their analysis." The High Council of the Dominion was located on the many light years away, but communication was instant through quantum channels. Within an hour, the message had been transmitted and a response had been received. The Council was disturbed. They had reviewed the human transmission and the intelligence data. Their conclusion was troubling. Humans represented a new type of threat, not because of their technology but because of their psychology. Standard conquest assumed that defeated populations would eventually accept their fate. They would become workers, servants, resources. But humans might never accept defeat. They might resist forever. The Council sent additional data. They had analyzed human history in detail. They found records of something called guerrilla warfare, where small groups of fighters continued to resist even when their armies had been destroyed. They found stories of resistance movements that lasted decades. They found evidence of blood feuds that continued for generations. Most disturbing of all, they found that humans often celebrated their losses more than their victories. They built monuments to fallen soldiers. They wrote songs about hopeless battles. They told stories about heroes who died fighting impossible odds. This was not the behavior of a species that would ever stop fighting. Commander Al called another meeting with his officers. This time, the mood was different. Gone was the casual confidence they had felt when they first entered the solar system. Now there was uncertainty, doubt. "If we conquer Earth," Al said, "we will gain one planet, but we will also create an enemy that will never rest. Humans who escape will spread across the galaxy. They will tell others what we did. They will build alliances against us. They will wait for generations if necessary until they are strong enough to strike back." "We have many enemies," pointed out. "What is one more?" "One more enemy is usually acceptable," Al agreed. "But this enemy is different. This enemy will not negotiate. They will not make peace. They will not accept anything less than our complete destruction. Is one planet worth that?" Al looked uncomfortable. "Commander, the Dominion expects us to succeed. If we return empty-handed, there will be questions." "There will be more questions if we start a war we cannot finish," Al replied. "The Dominion is vast, but we have limits. We cannot afford an eternal enemy." He turned to the viewing screen where Earth hung in the darkness of space. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green and white. It looked peaceful from here. It looked harmless. But Commander Al had read the human message. He had seen their history, and for the first time in his career, he was afraid. Not of their weapons, not of their technology. He was afraid of their stubbornness. "Contact the High Council again," he ordered. "Tell them we need to discuss this further. The deadline is still 12 hours away. We have time to make the right decision." And as the hours passed, the most powerful military commander in the Dominion did something he had never done before. He hesitated. On Earth, the waiting was almost unbearable. The deadline was now only 8 hours away. Governments had done everything they could. Emergency shelters were prepared. Evacuation plans were in place for major cities. Military forces were on full alert, even though everyone knew they could not stop what was coming. In the underground facility in Nevada, Blake sat with his team and stared at the ceiling. They had sent their message. They had done everything they could. Now there was nothing left but hope. Amy Porter was trying to monitor the alien fleet, but there was not much to see. The ships were still in position, still waiting. They had not responded to the human transmission. There was no way to know if the message had made any difference at all. "Maybe they're laughing at us," Torres said quietly. "Maybe they read our message and decided we're even more pathetic than they thought." Ben shook his head. If they were going to attack immediately, they would have done it already. The fact that they're still waiting means something. Or it means they're enjoying watching us squirm, Amy replied. Stood up and walked to the window. There was no actual window in the underground facility, just a screen that showed a simulation of the outside world. The sun was setting over the Nevada desert. It was beautiful. He wondered if it would be the last sunset humanity would ever see. Whatever happens, he said, we told them the truth. We showed them who we are. If that's not enough, then at least we went out on our own terms. The hours passed slowly. Reports came in from around the world. In Tokyo, people were gathering in parks to watch the sky together. In Paris, the tower was lit up with the colors of every nation on Earth. In New York, Times Square was packed with people holding signs that said things like, "We will not go quietly" and "Humanity forever." It was strange thought. In the face of extinction, humans were not running away or hiding. They were coming together. They were supporting each other. They were refusing to be afraid. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was what the message really meant. In the Pentagon, Cole watched the clock tick down. He had not slept in over 50 hours. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking from too much coffee, but he refused to leave his post. General Lisa stood beside him. She had accepted that this might be the end. She had called her daughter and told her she loved her. She had written a letter to her just in case. Now she was ready for whatever came next. "You really think this will work?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," admitted. "But I know that doing nothing would not work, and I know that fighting would not work, so this is all we have left." The clock showed 6 hours remaining, then 5, then 4. And then something happened. A communication officer looked up from his console, his face pale with shock. "Sir, the alien fleet is moving." His heart stopped. "Moving where? Toward us?" "No, sir." The officer's voice was shaking. "They're turning around. They're heading away from Earth." For a moment, no one spoke. No one even breathed. "Are you sure?" finally asked. "I'm sure, sir. All 300 ships are changing course. They're moving toward the outer solar system. They're leaving." Grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. His legs felt weak. He could not believe what he was hearing. "They're really leaving." "Yes, sir, they're really leaving." General let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Tears were forming in her eyes. Around the room, officers were cheering, hugging, crying. The weight of certain doom was lifting from their shoulders. Picked up the phone and called the president. His voice was unsteady. "Mr. President, the alien fleet is withdrawing. Repeat, the alien fleet is withdrawing. They're leaving the solar system." On the other end of the line, President Edward Gray was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was filled with emotion. "God bless America. God bless humanity. We survived." In the Nevada facility, Blake received the news with quiet relief. Amy hugged him, was laughing and crying at the same time. Ben was just sitting there, shaking his head in disbelief. "It worked," Amy said. "It actually worked." "Of course it worked," Ben replied with a small smile. "We told them the truth about ourselves, and the truth was enough." Looked at his team, at these people who had worked through the night to save humanity with nothing but words. They were heroes now, even if the world would never know their names. "We didn't just survive," he said. "We showed the galaxy who we are. We showed them that humans don't give up, that we don't surrender, that we keep fighting even when there's no hope left." Nodded. "They will tell others. They'll warn other species about us. Earth will become known as the planet you don't invade, the species you don't threaten." "Is that a good thing?" Amy asked. "It's the best thing," replied. "Fear can be a shield just as much as it can be a weapon. They were afraid of us. Not our guns, not our missiles. They were afraid of our spirit, and that fear saved us." Far above Earth, Commander Al stood on the bridge of the Oblivion's edge and watched the blue planet disappear behind him. His officers were confused. They had never retreated before. They did not understand what had happened. But Al understood. The High Council had debated for hours. They had analyzed the human message from every angle. In the end, they reached a simple conclusion. Conquering Earth would create an enemy that could never be defeated, not because of technology, not because of military power, but because humans simply did not know how to quit. The Dominion had many enemies. They could not afford one that would hunt them forever. So they left. They turned their fleet around and headed back to the stars, and behind them Earth remained free. In New Mexico, Danny was outside when the news reached him. Kate called him, sobbing with joy. "They're leaving, Danny. The aliens are leaving. We won." Danny looked up at the sky. The sun was rising now, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange. It was the most beautiful sunrise he had ever seen. "We won," he repeated softly. "We actually won." He thought about what had happened over the past 2 days. The fear, the uncertainty, the waiting, and then, at the last moment, salvation. Humanity had faced its greatest test and passed, not with weapons, not with technology, but with words, with truth, with the simple refusal to accept defeat. Danny smiled and went inside to tell his family the good news. Months later, Blake was invited to give a speech at the United Nations. World leaders from every country were present. The room was silent as he approached the podium. "2 months ago," he began, "we faced extinction. An alien fleet came to our world expecting us to surrender or die. Instead, we sent them a message. We told them who we are. We told them what we would do if they attacked, and they believed us." He paused and looked out at the audience. "They believed us because every word was true. Humans have survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We have fought hopeless battles and refused to give up. We have passed our grudges and our dreams down through generations. We are stubborn and vengeful, and we never, ever stop." He smiled slightly. The thought they were hunting prey. They discovered they were waking a nightmare, not because we're strong, but because we don't know how to quit. The room erupted in applause, stood at the podium and felt the weight of what had happened. Humanity had survived, and more than that, they had proven something to the galaxy. Earth was not an easy target. Earth was never an easy target. And anyone who thought otherwise would learn the same lesson they had learned. Humanity does not go quietly into the night. Humanity fights. Humanity survives. Humanity endures. And in the darkness of space, among all the stars and all the worlds and all the species that lived and died throughout the galaxy, there was now one planet that was different. One planet that had refused to break. One planet that had turned away an empire with nothing but words and will. Earth, home of humanity. The species that would never surrender. The end.